masters of speed. This is Formula One.
Hello there, welcome back to another setup video. It's a wet Monaco. Let's go and find out what we did here. So Monaco, as we all know, is a very high downforce circuit, and you need as much downforce as you can physically get. So the wings have stayed exactly the same as the dry setup. And why am I talking about the dry setup? It's because I've taken the dry setup and modified it to become a wet or an inter setup. Usually right now is where I say I've done this on the wings. I've taken the wings up by 2 if it was an inter setup, or I've taken them up by 4 if it was a wet setup. You can't, because the maximum we can go to is 50 and we are running max downforce. Onto the transmission, I've taken it down from the on diff down from 65 to 35, and I've taken the diff off down as well. I've only taken the diff off down by 5, so I have changed the diff on from 65 to 35, and I would keep the same if it was wet, if it was a full wet setup. So that's using the blue tires, and I've changed the diff off from 50 down to 45. I've kept the engine braking exactly the same. I would run this if it was a full wet setup. Onto the suspension geometry, and you'll be shocked to find out that I've changed zero, nothing. Kept it left. Onto the suspension, I have kept the front suspension and the rear suspension the same. I would do it if it was inters or wet setup. And remember, before we go any further, if you're league racing, for example, like I do a lot of, if it was a race where it started dry and then ended wet, I would run a dry setup. If it was a wet race and then ended dry, I would run a dry setup. Why? Simply because you want to be faster either at the start or at the end of the race. And if you run an inters or a wet setup, you will find very quickly that you'll be losing a lot of positions at the end of the race, simply because the other cars around you would be a lot faster. But that's not to say that you can't make changes during the race. For an example, if you were to start a race that was dry and then ended on inters, when you come in to the pits to change to inters tires, take the front wing up by 2. If it was a wet race, so you had to change to the blue stripe tires, take the wing up by 4 when you pit. Granted, you're not going to have the rear stability. However, you will have some way in the force of front stability. So yeah. Onto the front anti-roll bar, I've taken the roll bar from 21, I think it was, down to 15. And the rear anti-roll bar I've taken from, I think it was 18 down to 12. I've increased the ride out by 3, and I've kept the rear ride out the same. And I would run this if it was an inters or a wet setup. So if you start on the green tire, that's inters. If you start on the wet tire, which is blue tire, this is what I would run. I have changed nothing for the brakes. However, it's so easy to lock up around Monaco, and traction isn't that great either. Traction's not that great in the dry, and you just need to be mindful that you do not overheat your rear tires, because it is so easy around Monaco. But yeah, brake pressure 98%, brake bias 56. I find that's the sweet spot for me. Onto the tires, and I've kept the rear tires exactly the same. The tire pressure is exactly the same. So 29.0 on the front and 26.0. Like I just said though, it is so simple to overheat the tires around Monaco. You need to be so careful, and whilst you need to be careful, you also need to send it as well. Just forget the walls are there and just go for it. This has been Monaco. I really hope it helps. Let me know what you think. Do all that good stuff. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and yeah, have a good one, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.